I love these microphones. They make me feel very Eurovision. Yeah. In other German-Australian news, because Australia is now in Eurovision, last night Germany beat Australia in the Confederation Cup 3-2. So there's not a surprise. So thank you for having me. I apologize. I will be the official non-German speaker in the conference program. I hope that this will not be a problem for any of you. I'll try not to use any particularly obscure Wikimedia vocabulary, because in any community, including archives, we invent our own specific vocabulary that makes no sense to anyone outside the community. As was described in the kind introduction, I've been involved in the Wikimedia, so the Wikipedia organization, Wikimedia, the community, for many years in various roles to do with cultural heritage, which we call GLAM, Galleries, Libraries, Archives, Museums. It's a cute acronym. It does not mean anything more than that. It's just fun. But now I'm also living in Europe, not coming from Australia, working for Europeana. Some of you know Europeana? Yes. As the Wikimedia liaison for Europeana. Europeana's job is to collect and share European cultural heritage. Wikipedia or Wikimedia Commons are an excellent way of doing that, especially because of the visibility, because it is a community of people from across Europe in all the languages. It's public, no advertising. So the methodology and the ideologies are very consistent. Different methods, but the same goals. So I'm here to try and give a little flavor, a summary of the things that Wikimedia community is doing with archives recently. This is not a complete or comprehensive view of what I do or of Wikimedia. There's a lot of different things, and I'm not an archivist by profession, so I do not have the precise details of OA, MPH, or IIIF, or whatever the metadata format. I like metadata. I think it's an excellent idea. I support others knowing about it. We also have in the audience Raimund Specking, who is the official GLAM coordinator for this region and lives in Cologne. I'll be referring to official. I will be referring to some of the things that he is doing, but if you have any questions about what Wikimedia Deutschland and what is doing, the national association in Germany is involved with, or what is happening in North Rhine-Westphalia, Raimund is your man. So, GLAM, as I mentioned, some of you will be obviously familiar with Wikipedia. I hope some of you will be familiar with Wikidata, more or less. This is something I will mention in more detail, but it is the most, in my opinion, most exciting innovation in the Wikimedia universe in the last few years, because it is all about collecting structured metadata and putting it, structured metadata, that's a redundant phrase, and putting it into the Wikimedia universe. Wikipedia is text, is prose, is written encyclopedic information. Wikidata can be used for structured queries and connected to every other kind of database. So we're trying to have the best advantages of the Wikipedia community model and the best advantages of structured information, and producing something really quite spectacular. And Wikimedia Commons is our multimedia repository. This is the place where you can find public domain and freely licensed, so Creative Commons materials, video, audio, photographs. As these are the three main projects that maybe you don't know outside Wikipedia. We have others, but they are less relevant to archives. Wikimedia Deutschland has run many activities with the cultural sector in the last few years to try and increase the awareness of archives and obviously museums and the general public about what we do and how Wikimedia community can benefit the cultural sector, and the cultural sector can receive benefit from the Wikimedia community. We are here to try and share and make more visible the cultural heritage of every country, of every society. And because we are volunteers, because it is donation-based, because there is no advertising, and because we are local in every place, that is much more interesting for a public cultural institution. Obviously, we have a very visible platform as well, so there is a public awareness motivation. For example, Wikipedia Glam on Tour has worked in North Rhine-Westphalia with these institutions, just in this zone, to try and showcase the kinds of different things that Wikimedia community can do. Examples soon. If your institution is interested in that, then please contact Barbara Fischer on kultur@wikimedia.de. Coding Da Vinci is another program Wikimedia Deutschland runs to try and have cultural heritage hackathons. And they have run many to bring different kinds of people with different kinds of cultural data sets into one place and say, here is Wi-Fi, here is coffee, lock the door, go. And see, and the variety of interesting remix with this cultural heritage is fascinating. And thirdly, Wikimedia Deutschland operates some Creative Commons Change Your Mind presentations about describing the nuance of this copyright system that you have heard about, Creative Commons, and the nuance and the details within it, because it is not one copyright license. It is a series of copyright licenses that fit the zone between all rights reserved, C in a circle, and no rights reserved, public domain, very old. This zone in the middle, there's a lot of varieties, and it is not simply the Creative Commons license. And there's a lot to learn about what are the advantages and difficulties inside those pieces. So Wikimedia Deutschland can be your guide, and Raymond can help you if you are interested in knowing more about any of these things. Wikidata is a Wikimedia Deutschland and German production. It is the newest of the sister projects in the Wikimedia universe. So Wikipedia, Wikimedia Commons, Wikisource for original texts, Wikibooks for writing instruction manuals, textbooks, Wikidata. It has over 10 million individual items now, and quite differently from any other metadata schema or platform you have ever worked with. In every other system, you create the ontology for a particular field of interest, asteroids or prints and drawings or DNA categorization of species, whatever the topic. Heritage buildings, they all have their particular ontology and hierarchy of terms. And then you fill the vocabulary, you fill the item list after you have fixed the ontology. Wikimedia and Wikidata, these two things are fluid at the same time. And there is no specific or predefined scope for what is in and what is out of this ontology, of this database. Therefore, it's messy, but data is messy. And anyone who thinks data is clean has not played with any data. So we acknowledge that Wikidata is not finished, that the ontology changes, that the display and query functions change, and that there is never the perfect result. You can have one item, this is a demonstration of one item, that has perfect information, perfect information. But you do not know if a query for many results is complete. And we acknowledge that. We embrace this unfinished nature of the database. So the original premise for Wikidata was, what is the city in the world with a female mayor that has the largest population? Do you understand the query? Now, you can structure this question in your mind for a computer. Okay, find all the cities, show me the list of the mayors of the cities, rank the list in order of population, now exclude all of the men, and then you have the result. And there are other ways of potentially structuring that question. That information exists in Wikipedia articles, individual Wikipedia articles, for cities, for people. But there is no way you can find the answer to your structured question just by reading Wikipedia articles. So Wikidata is an attempt to solve that question and any other structured question. Show me the birthplace of every artist in the collection of the Louvre. So this requires the connection of different data sets that don't exist in one place. This is a demonstration of the Wikidata item Douglas Adams as an example. This is how we visualize, we structure any Wikidata item. Raimund or I can go into more detail if you want, or talk to Wikimedia Deutschland, but just as data people, you might want to know this. We have the label, human readable, in a language. We have the unique identifier, Q, numbers. The numbers are chronological, no semantic meaning. We can put the label in any language. So it can be in right to left language, left to right language. Many, obviously, people will be spelled the same, but cities, etc., will have different spellings. The description and the aliases, so the alternative names, are also added. So first name, comma, first name, for example, to indicate in every language, and we work in at least 280 languages, manually and semi-automatically added information. Then we have statements, and statements are produced in triples, so property, relationship, property. Are you familiar with triple store data sets structures? The idea that you have this concept is this related to this. So Douglas Adams has education at St. John's College. Douglas Adams, education, St. John's College. And Douglas Adams, education somewhere else. These triple relationships. Equally, St. John's College or Brentwood School is another item with its own relationships. So you could have the reverse relationships. St. John's College has student Douglas Adams. So these relationships go backwards and forwards across different kinds of data. Then we have qualifiers. So end time, academic major, academic degree, start time. All of these are methods of restricting the information to particular things, time or place, depending on the kind of data you're referring to. So a painting could have a construction date, a start date when it was made, and an end date when it was destroyed, for example. A building can have a name or an owner, but that will change over time. Or location. The organization will have a headquarters that will change into different places over time. This method allows us to model information ideally across multiple different methods of nuance. I would recommend, as archivists, there's many academic papers and query visualization tools on maps, on timelines. But as archivists, I recommend this particular blog post, Wikidata, not blog post, academic publication, Wikidata as a digital preservation knowledge base from published by the Open Preservation Foundation as a good introduction from an archival point of view, describing how Wikidata works. This graphic is from that blog post, from that article, and giving some descriptions of how Wikidata can be integrated into an archival professional practice. There are many other ways of describing and using Wikidata, but this is a specific example for the archival context. Wikidata is 4 years old this year, so it is our youngest sister project, and this is the team based in Berlin at the fourth birthday party this year. I'd like to point out 2 specific activities that are happening. WikidataCon, which will be in Berlin this year, in October. So you are welcome to apply to go to that conference specifically about the future of Wikidata. And WikiCite is a sub-conference about Wikidata and how can we improve the way Wikidata works as a bibliographic storage platform, bibliographic metadata. So we try and map our metadata structure to FRBR, to MARC, to any pre-existing metadata schema for any organization on any topic, asteroids, genes. I don't mean genes, I mean DNA. Or genes, in fact, if there's a metadata schema about the clothing genes, we'll map to that as well. And so bibliographic metadata for Wikidata could be very exciting as a way as a practical example. Wikipedia footnotes at the moment, when you write a Wikipedia article and write the footnote, this fact is from this book on this page. Me, as a Wikipedia editor, as a volunteer, I have to type the author, last name, first name, publication date, publication year, location, book title, edition number, etc., etc. That could be structured information. I don't have to type that every time. If we can produce that feature into Wikipedia, we will be able to automatically export footnotes in any structured format, any footnoting style, and be able to say that this book is in the library next to you, or this is how you can access that book, or this book has been referenced 50 times on these 20 Wikipedia articles in these 4 languages. Or a publisher could say, I own this ISBN range. Where are the Wikipedia references to my books? And many, many other potential advantages besides. But the idea of a global, multilingual, open source bibliographic metadata repository is quite exciting for some people, our people. So after Wikidata and Wikimedia Deutschland specific things, I want to talk about some archive specific things happening in Wikimedia in the last month. Just to the last very recent period. There are lots of examples from lots of different places. This is the front page, this is the index of this month in GLAM, our newsletter. And from different countries, there are different activities. I've highlighted the ones about archives, and you can see that throughout there's museums and libraries and lots of different archive-related activities included. It's difficult to say for many institutions, this is a library, this is a museum, this is an archive. The words are increasingly merging. So the definition of these are archival activities and these are not archival activities is vague. But just as an example, note the Germany report is written by our friend Raymond. So from that example, from this month's list of activities that we are doing across the cultural sector, from the Swiss community, there is a donation of a Wikipedian in residence at an archive working with the corporate archive of Swissair. In many cases, one of the most popular activities we do is with historic photograph collections. That's one of the easiest and most logically explainable ways of sharing cultural heritage collections with Wikimedia. Old photograph collection, Wikipedia article, connect them. Copyright, as you know, is a particularly complicated thing for archives, and that's why many of our partnerships are with collections that are very old, but that does not restrict us. We don't have to only do out of copyright things if the owner shares them, but in many circumstances that is the case. So the Swissair corporate archive is now on Wikimedia Commons, and for Wikipedia articles, or anyone else, can use that collection for remix, for including in Wikipedia articles in any language about the history of the company, about the history of aviation, about the history of that particular plane or location, or other, potentially there's a person, maybe a famous person in that photograph. They get a new life by being available to be found and used in a way beyond the scope of the archive's own interest. Maybe the archive did not know or have the time to caption this material, but Wikipedians can put a geolocation on it, sometimes. And that information can be shared back into the archive. We also have a Wikipedian residence at the State Archives in Macedonia, who has been there for the last 6 months, working again primarily with sharing the historic photograph collection, not only, but primarily working on sharing the historic photograph collection from the Macedonia State Archival Collection. All of these slides, by the way, I tweeted about 5 minutes before the presentation began the link to these slides on the hashtag of the conference, so you can follow along. I should have mentioned that before. So this is not a secret, you don't have to write this down. The links are available, these slides are online already. And they're free licensed, of course. So we have Wikipedians in residence at corporate archives and state archives. From America, in the last month, there are these interesting developments working with OCLC and WorldCat. They've produced interesting remixes of data sets, in this case, SNAC, Social Networks Archival Context, trying to bring together the archival collection metadata records and social networks, including Wikimedia, and other forms of non-official databases to try and connect them together. Now, Wikidata plays an important role here because Wikidata has items for people, and it connects the authority control number from as many different platforms as possible. So WorldCat for books connects to the Wikidata item when possible. VIAF, Virtual Internet Authority File for people, connects to the Wikidata item. So we can then send back and connect to other forms of structured authority control numbers. So the German National Library, or the British Library, or the French National Library, or the Taiwan National Library, or the Japan National Library, all of their authority control numbers have been connected by as many people as possible, Wikidata and others, which makes it very easy, relatively easy, for a service to say, show me a photograph of this person, even if the archive does not have a photograph of this person. Someone connected to it through the Wikidata number has a freely licensed and machine readable connection back. This is an image of this person. This is especially important when an archive, and this is always the case, an archive or a cultural heritage collection does not own everything about that person. It's very difficult for technical and policy reasons and legal reasons for one archive or one cultural organization to connect their cultural heritage collection, for example, the Van Gogh Museum, paintings by an individual painter, but it does not own every painting by Van Gogh. There are other paintings around, and for technical, legal, and policy reasons, it's hard to connect them to each other. Wikidata can do that because it's independent and open to connecting all of these data sets together. Also, you might be interested in the Code for Lib journal. So this is a recent academic publication, again, that tries to bring together, called the Remixing Archival Metadata Project, RAMP, how to connect and allow the restructuring of metadata coming from different places in a way that does not break everything. Whenever you try and move one piece of metadata into another metadata format, you lose detail, obviously. So we try and minimize, through the connections of Wikipedia articles and Wikidata items and others, minimize that loss of nuance when connections between metadata formats are made. This month, it was announced recently, but it happened last year. The Bulgarian Wikipedia community received this award as the official Friend of the Archive 2016 award for the Bulgarian Wikipedia community working with the Bulgarian state archives. Similar to the Macedonia example I mentioned before, there are Wikipedians, volunteers, local volunteers working with that state archive to try and connect it to the wider collection of Wikipedia articles and languages to make their heritage information available and findable outside Bulgaria and outside Bulgarian language. It's very important for every culture to collect it, but also share it. And the Wikipedia community was awarded this recognition this week. They're very proud of this recently. How am I going for time? I should also mention the National Archives of America, NARA, is the longest standing relationship that we have with an archive. This is not recent, it is continuing. The National Archives of America, NARA, have, in my knowledge, the first full-time permanent employee whose job is to be a Wikimedian. Now, I was a Wikipedian in residence at the British Museum, but that was not full-time and that was not permanent, and it was not paid. And we have many other Wikipedians in residence and people involved in different ways working with cultural heritage. NARA is the first one to have a full-time permanent Wikipedian in the staff because the National Archives of America has a very useful, from our perspective, copyright situation. Everything published by the federal government of the USA is by definition public domain from the start. This is why images from NASA, as a federal government archive, federal government organization of the USA, all of the NASA photographs are public domain. And only last month, the photographs from the European Space Agency were made Creative Commons. That is why NASA images of Europe are used and have always been used, and not European images of Europe from space. That's the value of making your material available. So the National Archives of America has always had this advantage. They are not restricted in sharing the cultural heritage collection of the American federal organizations, government and government organizations like NASA. And so their Wikimedian specifically works even more than these other things I've been mentioning for example, photograph donations. He works with a sister project I have not mentioned, Wikisource. Wikisource is so Wikipedia, Wikidata, Wikimedia Commons, Wikisource. This is for original texts, full texts. Think Project Gutenberg. Transcription. Obviously, there are other organizations out there. There are other encyclopedias. There's Wikipedia and other encyclopedias. There's Wikisource and other transcription services. Wikisource has been uploaded these materials, speeches, important letters, federal government documents of importance, laws in full text from the archives so that they can be data mined and visible through crawling from search engines in a way that a PDF document might not be, and structured with our categories and integrated into Wikipedia articles and translated and linked to different versions, if it's a book, for example. That has been the primary innovation of that archival project. So hopefully I'm giving you a taste of the different variety of ways that Wikimedia can work with an archive and has worked with archives. These two are more photography donations. One is a donation and one is a relationship. The bottom left is from the USA, the Pritzker Museum and Archive. These are donated scans of Second World War bond posters. Buy bonds, buy government bonds. Give us money so we can fight the war. And they are in the collection of the Pritzker Museum. And they have been beautifully scanned, and they're high resolution. And they're artworks, but they are in a poster collection, because they are posters, but they are also artworks. So they have been donated to Wikimedia and anyone else for use and for remix. So now the Wikipedia article, War Bonds, discussing the concept of war bonds from every country, any country, has this gallery demonstrating the variety from that country. Of course, when the information is more visible, more available from one place than another place, this is where you go. You can get the material from the easiest source. So we have this beautiful collection of war bond posters from the US. We don't from England or Sweden or Italy because they're not available. Up in the top left, you may recognize the location. These photographs were taken by Raymond, no, by your wife. Of the recent foundation stone event in Cologne for the state archive, for the historical archives in Cologne. This is part of an ongoing relationship that the local Wikipedia community in Cologne has, and this obviously is not from the collection of the archive, but about the history of the archive itself. So Wikipedians come to events, including, for example, Eurovision. Every year, Wikipedians are invited as an official press photographer with a accreditation to come to Eurovision to take photographs, because that is the best way for that material to be shared later on. We are a kind of media. So these are the most visible, most findable records of that event in the history of the Cologne State Archive, taken by Wikipedians attending. It's a part of making our own history as well. This is not a recent example, but it's an example I love. This is a couple of years ago, so I lied. These are not only new examples. This is from Ukraine. They, with a small grant from the Wikimedia Foundation, had this collection of historic wax cylinders, digitized musical recordings of folk music played on this instrument by a very well-known master of this instrument. But the recordings are very old and very poor quality, and now they are digitized. And they are available in a gallery on Wikipedia and also in the collection of the archive itself, as best as possible. The quality of the recordings depends. It's very old technology and it's very old objects. But this was an example of a very cheap activity to do with a grant that came from our own community to go to the archive and say, this is something that is important for us and for music and for our culture to share with the world. We want to help you digitize it. We want to make it available. And so they made it available. Beautiful folk songs that were never previously digitized. This one is not a Wikimedia example, but it is recent. But it's very interesting. It's an Australian example of the kind of remix art that you can do with open access cultural heritage collections from an archive. If anyone tweets this slide, I would be happy, particularly if you use that hashtag, redaction art, because my friends back in Australia will see that I'm speaking about their project in Germany and they'll be very happy. This project is to find in the collection of redacted documents from the National Archives of Australia, from the collection of our secret intelligence organization, ASIO, the Australian Secret Intelligence Organization. So there are government records in the public National Archive with black lines through them because they are secret documents. From this open source software, as a digital humanities remix art activity, Tim Sherratt has created a tool to find the redaction black lines that look like animal shapes. And then 3D printed those animal shapes as brooches, and someone else printed them as on black fabric, on cotton, and made a dress. Redaction art. It's wonderfully bizarre and fun and interesting, and talks about the history of, and shares the history of archival collections in a way that an archive itself would never do. That this material was findable, remixable, shareable, and you can talk about. I mean, the lady who wears this dress, someone says, what is that? Well, it's a dress made of fabric of animal shapes of documents in the National Archive that were censored. Fantastic. I think there is no formal potential for how that could relate to Wikimedia, but it's an example of something you can do with remix cultural heritage content in archives. My phone is buzzing with tweets. That's good. These next images come from Rome, and this is specifically the relationship with the Cologne community. So, in Cologne, there is the local K, the local office, the local place where the Wikipedia community can run projects. The headquarters for Wikimedia in Germany is in Berlin, and they have little branch locations around the country. So you can visit and meet some Wikipedians and have a coffee and potentially come up with an interesting project or become a Wikipedian yourself. From there, they have organized a variety of activities. In English, we call these editathons, editing marathon, but simply editing Wikipedia article together, usually volunteer interested in a topic, but not an expert, and the museum or the archive, the expert, the curator, they will sit together and maybe in a group work on a topic. Maybe it's successful, maybe it's productive, maybe it's not, but the idea is to connect experts and volunteers who are interested who can use that connection, that personal connection, to produce a result that is visible to the world. What I told to the British Museum when I first proposed Wikipedian in residence to the British Museum, because it was scary, it was strange, people from the internet, I said to the curators, how many times, you curator of the Greek collection at the British Museum, how many times do you have to answer the same question from the public? And it's a simple question, it's an answer you know, but it wastes your time to have to receive the email and process the response, and you don't know if that response has been useful. And as the expert at the British Museum, that's not a good use of your time. It is important for public access. Working with the Wikipedia community is a great way to outsource repetitive and simple questions for information, because that person will Google the question, they will go to Wikipedia, they will find the answer, and they will read the footnote that connects back to the archive. So you have attribution, you have a connection to the authority of the information, where this knowledge comes from. And that member of the public is satisfied they have used your resources without using your time. And if they have another question, a more nuanced, a more complicated, a contradictory question, now they know how to find you directly and not email 20 different archives and ask their friends. So you simultaneously, by working with the Wikipedia community, reduce the number of simple, repetitive, simplistic interactions with the public, and increase the likelihood, the possibility of connecting with new researchers with more complicated or more interesting questions about your expertise, about your original material. Maybe it was hidden before. So Wikipedians are a local community of volunteers, but also have a very big audience of our own. Another kind of activity we can do, and we do, is behind the scenes photography. Museum photography about museum work, sharing the professional practices of conservation in this example, or in the front, about exhibitions, or the artworks themselves. I visited this particular exhibition at the gallery in Cologne on Sunday. It's a fantastic exhibition. Really, have you seen this exhibition in Cologne? I recommend it. It's really interesting. But you would never know about the connection between Cologne and Paris, Place de la Concorde, unless you went to the exhibition like me by luck. I'm in Cologne, I'll visit the exhibition. Or you are proactively searching for that question. What relationship does the Place de la Concorde have with Cologne? Whoever asks that question? Or this information is integrated into other places where the information can be found by chance. For example, the Wikipedia article, Place de la Concorde, with a reference back to the collection, and hopefully some high-quality images of objects from the collection. That does not reduce the use or reduce the control of the collection. It increases the visibility, increases the relevance of the institution to the world. Completely different example of the kind of work the local community in Cologne does is drone photography. We have an annual competition called Wiki Loves Monuments, where we take photographs of heritage objects and get a photography prize. And obviously around the world there are lots of heritage locations that are poorly described, and people in our community love to take photographs. So these are all different kinds of ways that we work with archives and local communities. In the remaining 5 minutes, I want to mention the concept of the Memory of the World program and how I would think, as a proposal to an archival community, Wikipedia might have a relationship to that. We already write Wikipedia articles about the memory of the world, but maybe we can be part of it ourselves. So you're familiar with this, World Heritage. These are for buildings, this is for natural parks, the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, which is about to die. 5 years ago, for the 10th anniversary of Wikipedia, the history of Wikipedia, the German Wikipedia community, Wikimedia Deutschland, ran a campaign, World Heritage Upgraded, Wikipedia for World Heritage, to suggest, as a publicity awareness, that Wikipedia itself might be considered World Heritage. What does that mean? Hopefully the idea was to cause some controversy, some awareness, some public discussion about what does heritage mean in a digital world. Obviously this did not happen. Wikipedia is not on the register of World Heritage locations, but it caused a debate. And I recommend this thesis from 2014 by a German man, Wikipedia as a virtual monument, because, and there's the link to the full text, he proposed a new concept of virtual monument with all the semantic meanings and descriptions behind it of how the World Heritage concept is probably inadequate, insufficient for our new age. And Wikipedia is a good example of where that tension exists. These are the 6 criteria of memory of the world. Memory of the world is World Heritage, but for documents. It's the little brother of World Heritage places, and not many people know it. And maybe you, more than the general public, know about this. And to be registered as a memory of the world document, you have to meet one or more of these criteria. And there's a link to the dozens of objects in Germany that are listed on these criteria. For example, in the archive in Armenia, in Yerevan, there is an archive of original documents. This is the history of Armenian language from the beginning of the alphabet of that language. And they describe the significance of this collection. So it's not just one document, one book, or one page, or one painting, but a collection itself has a whole, as a value, as a collection, not just as an individual. For example, I find this language utterly confusing, but utterly beautiful as well. Notice the watermarks on their digitization, however. The Memory of the World program's concept is that the world's documentary heritage belongs to all, should be fully preserved and protected for all, with due recognition of cultural mores and practicalities. It should be permanently accessible to all without hindrance. That is the mission statement of Memory of the World. The Wikimedia mission statement is to imagine a world in which every person can freely share in the sum of human knowledge. I argue this is the same thing. The British Museum mission statement, by the way, founded precisely on the day 200 years earlier than Wikipedia, on the day, is to make available for all interested and curious persons. Which I love that. So, I argue that Wikipedia fits all of these criteria, not just one. As a document collection, as a whole, not one Wikipedia article, but all the languages, in the way that they constantly change, in the fact that it is a time-based document. Wikipedia can only happen now. It is representative of how our technology and our time talks about ourselves. It's a representation of our culture in contemporary society. Place, the place of the creation is important for Wikipedia. Not in a particular monastery, not in a wherever. The internet is the native home of this document. There are no websites or internet documents or born digital documents in the Memory of the World list. There is a film. There is no restriction on the format to be in the Memory of the World list. It specifically says in the criteria, born digital documents are valid. So they have acknowledged in the criteria that that is possible, but there are none. And I think Wikipedia is the best example of a born digital document for heritage. The social and cultural context of the creation, the people. There is a unique culture around this document, Wikipedians. The subject and theme is important, I believe, because we cover every possible subject and theme. That is interesting. It's the world's broadest and deepest document ever created. Wikipedia, when taken collectively, in English or in German, is the largest document ever written in that language by the largest number of people to ever work on the same document. The form and style has to be an exemplar of its presentation or medium, obvious. And the social and community significance. The document must have an emotional hold on people who are alive today. I have a very strong emotional connection to this document, and I think a lot of other people do as well. But this is the problem. The criteria also says, and I think very logically, very sensibly, the documentary heritage nominated must be finite and precisely defined. Broad or general or open-ended nominations will not be accepted. Not, for example, not everything in my archive. Yes, it's all important, but it's not all World Heritage status. Once added to the list, the document cannot be changed. Right? That makes complete sense. You can't say this is World Heritage and then add some more things or sell some things to make some money for your collection. But it does not work for us. Obviously, Wikipedia will continue to change. So my question to you, as an open question, is reuse, remix, changing of cultural heritage is the vernacular culture, is the native language of the internet. What does heritage mean if, in order to define something as heritage, it therefore has to be fixed for the 21st century? That makes sense for lots of things. And as archivists, you understand the idea of preservation. But it does not make sense for everything. How can this rule, if you accept that Wikipedia is valid for Memory of the World for the other criteria, any one or several, how can this rule be accommodated for Wikipedia? There are many potentially practical and maybe some slightly cheating methods. Like we just say, Wikipedia today, that copy, that's the heritage document, and tomorrow it changes. That's an option. We take a snapshot. We have a database dump that's frozen in time. And we archive that version with all the mistakes and changes and inconsistencies that change every day. But it's cheating. So that's my open question to you as archivists interested in heritage. If you accept that Wikipedia can be considered World Heritage, Memory of the World status and significance, how do you accommodate this tension of culture that changes when it must be fixed? Thank you.